What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to today's video. We're going to take this Pontiac Trans Am behind me and get it ready for a little bit of a road trip. There's a show that I went to last year and I'm going to go to this year down in Marshall, Minnesota, and we're going to be doing a little bit of road trip prep on this. Since I raced at the airport, I don't think I need to change the oil on it. It's only got a few hundred miles on it. Since I just did it, it's going to be okay. But the transmission was replaced in this car before I bought it. It was recently rebuilt, so we're going to go ahead and change the transmission fluid and do the nightmare task of replacing the spark plugs on this LS1. Now, I say it's a nightmare because this side, the driver's side, is pretty straightforward. It's very easy. But on the passenger side, when you get all the way back to the rear cylinder, it can be a bit of a pain. So you'll kind of see what I'm talking about when we get to that very rear plug. It is a real pain to change that one. There's memes about it. It just sucks. So like always, I'm gonna run to the parts store real quick. I've got a little bit of this Dextron 3 Valvoline, and that's what the T56 calls for. So we'll be using Valvoline, Dextron, Mercon, and for the spark plugs, I'm gonna be using NGK TR6 spark plugs. So we'll do that. There's a little bit of a leak to chase down. It almost looks like oil is leaking. It was running down the torque arm, which is questionable. Hopefully it's not oil coming out of the back of the engine anywhere. And the last thing is, I do have to pick up a new part for the car. It came in the mail from Bahrain in the Middle East, which is odd, but we're gonna have to pick that up from the post office, and I'm really interested to see if it's actually what I ordered from the guy. First things first, gonna go for a quick ride to the parts store in the Dodge, and we'll be back here in just a minute. It is another cold and gloomy day up here. Alright, so we made it. I guess I'll grab these parts and we'll see you guys in a minute and head back home. Alright, after great trial and tribulation, we got our spark plugs and the rest of our transmission fluid for the transmission fluid change. Now, we'll go into the car real quick and I'll show you that there's a small leak. And it's either coming from the rear end or it's coming from further upstream. So, I don't know if you'll be able to tell. Hey, look right there. There's a little bit of fluid accumulation on that torque arm. So I don't know if it's running down the drive shaft and slinging onto the torque arm. You can see how wet it is right there on the exhaust where it's slinging off of the pinion. I knew that it leaked a little bit last year. It didn't leave puddles like this before though, so we're gonna have to take a look at what's going on there too. But first things first, we're gonna start on the driver's side. I'll do one plug at a time. It's not terribly interesting, but we'll do a little bit of a time lapse with it here. We've got our elusive NGK TR6 plugs. Thank you to AutoZone for these. And at the other parts store, we got the remainder of the transmission fluid that I need. I got 3 more quarts. I believe it's 3.8 is the fluid capacity of the T56 transmissions in these cars. What I'm gonna do is I'll have the car up level on all fours, on jack stands and blocks, of course, and we'll drain and fill the transmission with some fresh fluid because I do not believe it's been replaced since it was actually rebuilt and put in the car. So we're gonna kind of glaze over what's going on with the spark plugs. It's not terribly interesting. I guess that's about enough of me talking, and let's get to it. I just want to do a quick note on these NGK TR6 spark plugs. If you are anywhere on the LS1 Tech forums all the time or any other Corvette type forums or anything like that, you'll see that they want you to gap them anywhere between 35 and 45 thousandths on your naturally aspirated setup. I'm going to do right around 40 is what I'm going to shoot for, so somewhere right in the middle. So drop a comment down below if you have an opinion on this. I'm sure it's as debatable as what fluid you should put in your transmission. That being said, I'm going to gap mine at 40 thousandths, make sure it's going to run good. I don't want to get any pre-detonation or pinging, or I don't want to have spark blowing out, so I'm going to go pretty much in the middle is what I'm shooting for. And yeah, I guess that's enough rambling. Again, I thought I was done, but that's an important part to bring up is that the gap is somewhat important on these. So we'll get them gapped and start replacing spark plugs. Should be pretty straightforward. Alright, so if this is not your first time changing spark plugs, just skip right through this. This is for people more so that watch the channel that have not actually done this before themselves or are new to the hobby. So it's going to be a little bit boring if you know how to do this, but if you don't know how to do it, stick around. It's going to take 2 seconds. So as you can see, there's a spark plug right there. They do come with a cardboard sleeve around them, so you'll discard that after you open the packaging. And you'll see inside there's the threaded portion that goes into the cylinder head, this will actually ground on the cylinder head. This is the strap you're going to adjust, and that's what's going to allow the spark to jump from the center conductor up to this gap. So we're actually going to adjust the distance that this is from the center conductor, that little dark portion you see in there. These are very cheap. It's a spark plug gap tool. This is from O'Reilly's. It's maybe $1, so definitely get yourself one of these. They're very handy. And you can see that there's size increments from right to left, 20 thousandths all the way up to, looks like 80 thousandths. So you have a pretty wide gap here. The slot gets, obviously the slot gets wider for a wider gap. It's actually tapered. So we'll get set up here real quick and we'll see what one of these is gap to right from NGK. Now what you're going to want to do, does that make sense? Now this one only fits to about right here. So right now it's actually at 35 thousandths, and that should be pretty clear there. Looks like it's going to look okay. We want to open it up to 40 thousandths. So in this case, we're actually going to pry it open just a little bit, just like that. Now if you look, we're almost there. We'll pry again just a touch, doesn't take much. And I'm going to call that 40 thousandths right there. It's dead center. So it's actually wedged there. If you move it over here, you can see it moves very freely. As soon as we get over to the 40 thousandths, you kind of got to step it right onto there, and that's going to be about perfect. So if that makes sense, we open the gap up, we got 40 thousandths. We're going to do that to the other 7 spark plugs, and these are going to be good to go into the hole. Alright, so we've got 8 spark plugs gapped at 40 thousandths. I'm going to go ahead and pop off each spark plug wire from front to back, and we'll just replace them one at a time. This side's going to go real quick. The other side should go okay as well, save the rear spark plug. Now before, I've actually done them from the bottom of the car. That's almost the easiest way to get to that one, so a little bit of a pain. But anyways, we're pretty much good to go. Won't dwell on this too much, and we'll keep trucking along here. We got the old E3 spark plugs out. The rear cylinder actually has some oil on the threads. Anyways, plugs are all ready. You didn't see it, but I did put a little bit of anti-seize on each of the threads, so they'll come out easy later for the next person. I don't want them seizing in there on myself or anyone else, so that just creates more problems. We'll thread those 4 plugs in, put our plug wires back on with a little bit of fresh dielectric grease on the end of the plugs, and we'll be pretty much good to go. Alright, so this side's all done. I did put a little bit of dielectric grease on the coil pack and spark plug side of each wire. Not too much, just a little bit to keep water out and keep good contact. This side went pretty good. We're ready to move over to the passenger side, which is actually a little bit tougher on this particular car. The front plugs are going to be not too terrible to get to, but the rear 2 are a bit of a pain. So wish me luck. Alright, so there's our original 4. Here's 3 from the passenger side. Now the farther back, if you've never worked on one of these cars, the farther back you go, the more impossible it becomes to actually access the plugs with your hands. So I'm afraid this is like fighting the final boss in a video game, is getting like this very back plug done. Really not looking forward to this. I'm already getting scratched up and cut, and I was slightly bleeding from one spot already from these little chunks of hardware hanging out in sharp corners and everything. So this last one's a little bit of a battle. I've done this a few times before. It always sucks. This car apparently is no different, you know, surprisingly. But keep at it. You'll be able to get them all done yourself too. It's going to be a pain getting the spark plug wire even back onto the far rear plug. But it is what it is. So I'm going to do battle with that one, and hopefully it goes easy. Alright, so as you can tell, we are below the car. And if you look up there, you'll see a very lonely wrench up there. I can actually reach it pretty good with my arm. I can do it all without looking, but that's how you gotta change this rear spark plug. It is a literal nightmare. They're so annoying to have to change, and that's where all the memes come from. So if you know, you know. Alright, so as you can see, there's driver's side and passenger side spark plugs are all done. Got all the plugs in both sides of the engine. The only tip I have, and obviously, as you saw, I didn't film everything, is that to change that rear plug with long tubes or with the stock manifolds, my only advice is just raise the car up and do it from the bottom. I only had to get the car up about that much, and when you're reaching from the bottom, it's a piece of cake. So don't fight it from the top. You're gonna waste a ton of time and cut yourself and curse and scream and hate everything about the car. Rightfully so. It's a nightmare to do from the top. Don't even try to do it from the bottom. So we'll get the car back down on the ground, start it, make sure everything's running good, then we'll get it up on all fours and we'll change the transmission fluid. I don't know, seems like it's running good. Alright, so the car's up in the air and she's pretty good. So it's basically level. You want to make sure that you have the car nice and level when you're draining and filling the transmission fluid. In a manual transmission, so the fluid level sits proper. You don't want it too far leaning forward or backwards. This is going to be just fine. So other than that, just let me shake the car a little bit. Just going to make sure it's going to fall before I'm under the car. It's something that I like to do. I give both the wheels a good kick and I shook the body a little bit, so it's not going anywhere. First things first, we'll get under there. We're going to open the fill plug first, so if you can't get the drain plug out, you at least have fluid and you can drive the car. So, pro tip, always do the fill plug first. Come with me on a journey under the car. You'll see right there is the fill plug. It shows Dextron 3 is the suggested transmission fluid. And on the other side of the car is the drain plug. So, it's actually cast into the side of the transmission, which I hadn't seen before, I guess. So we're going to open up the fill plug first to make sure that we can refill this once it's empty. And yeah, then we'll go ahead and drain this. It'll be about 4 quarts to come out, and it shouldn't take too long, and we'll go for a little drive.
This is a Harlem beat.
Alright, so I filmed almost none of filling that transmission fluid back up. As you can see by the remainder of the puddle that I already cleaned up with a little bit of floor dry, it was extremely messy as expected. So, all that being said, we got new NGK TR6 spark plugs under the engine bay, and I think I'm about ready to put the car back down and go for a little drive and make sure everything is looking good. We do have to pick up my package at the post office because it was held. So yeah, we'll go ahead and make sure everything's sorted out on the car and feels good and it's not leaking anything new, being I just took apart the transmission fill and drain plug, and they are torqued to 20 pound-feet of torque each. So make sure you torque your stuff down. Snug is good. I mean, you don't have to torque them with that kind of thing, but I do it because it's what the factory recommends, and they're generally right. So we'll get the car back down, we'll go for a little drive and make sure everything's good, and we'll see you in a little bit. Alright, let's go for a putt-putt and see what the car feels like. Hopefully the rain holds out a little bit. One thing to note real quick about the car, I'm going about 30 miles an hour at 25 only, 2,000 RPM. the car does not buck anymore. It used to. I wouldn't have been able to do this with the old plugs. Like, this car would have bucked so bad that you'd have to go faster, you know what I mean, to get the RPMs up a little higher. So I'll see how low I can actually get it, but this is actually a really big difference in just the low RPM, you know, smoothness. Like right now, partial throttle, it still bucks a little, you can hear it, but it is 500% better. Like, you kind of got to take my word on it. I never would have thought that this would have fixed it, but that's really awesome. So I'm super happy right off the bat. I think I had bad plugs and didn't quite realize it. So something's gonna have to clue me in on this, because the car is quieter, and I don't think it's just me. The car is definitely quieter. I noticed it when it was idling, but driving it, it's really apparent. So I don't quite know what's going on. The power feels a lot smoother. I don't have to lean into it as hard to actually get moving. It doesn't feel like it revs any quicker or anything like that, but the power does feel better, and it does seem to run a little bit better. The transmission feels nice and smooth. Shifts are smooth. I don't know if it feels any better than it did before, but it's nice knowing that there's fresh fluid in there, especially after being recently rebuilt, or allegedly rebuilt. So I'm gonna go put a couple more miles on it, and I guess I'll report back. But so far, I think this is a really, really good fix, and I didn't to like fix anything. I didn't really realize that there might have been a problem with the spark plugs that were in there, or maybe some spark plug wires weren't seated all the way, or what the deal is. But I think the car's making more power just as is. Alright, so that pulled 10 times harder. I'm a little bit surprised at how much more power it made. It's noticeable, I guess I'd say that. So whether or not it's going to be making it closer to 400 like it should be, maybe the plugs are wrong the whole time, who knows. Either way, let's get headed back home. So the last thing I'm going to replace in this video is the fuel filter itself, and I'm going to replace with a Wix part number 33311 fuel filter. To release pressure from the fueling system, as you can see, I've already got the car up in the back. You actually want to remove the gas cap like that, so it's nice and open. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that shut. And the other thing we're going to end up doing is opening up the Schrader valve on the front of the fuel rail here and releasing the pressure from the fuel system. So you're going to spill a little bit, and just beware of that. Have something to catch it. I'm going to use my trusty drain pan. I'm going to cover up the end here with a microfiber towel and just release pressure with a screwdriver. So a little bit of fuel is going to come out. It's going to be under pressure, so that's going to be expected. Be prepared for that. Don't do it with the engine hot or anything like that, where you risk starting everything on fire, obviously. So use common sense. I've got a fire extinguisher up over on the wall, so if anything does happen, I do have a small chance of putting some of the fire out, but let's hope it doesn't come to that. As you can see under the car, there's the fuel filter. The quick disconnect side is on the fuel tank side. Obviously there's the forward end of the car. So I'll get this replaced real quick, and that'll about wrap up today's video. Not going to bore you with taking it all apart. It's pretty straightforward. Alright, so believe it or not, I didn't film a bunch of that, but I did get the fuel filter replaced. It did make a little bit of a mess like usual, but having the can worked fine. I didn't really spill any fuel, so it actually went pretty good. Little tip, if you're going to do this yourself, there's a little cable tray type deal here. It's a 10mm bolt. Loosen that up and you can actually work at this plastic line that goes up to the tank. So, fuel filter is done. We'll fire it up and hopefully call it a job well done. Looks like nothing's leaking. I'm going to start the car up. Alright, so there you have it. The fuel filter was changed. I just went for a little bit of a drive, and the car ran really good, so I'm happy with that. It doesn't seem to have changed as dramatically as the spark plugs, which is really strange. After looking around on Ls1 Tech and asking some of the guys on the forums there, it seems as though it's pretty common knowledge that the E3 spark plugs are pretty bad, but I've never had first-hand experience with them. I've changed, I don't know, hundreds of spark plugs in my years owning cars with different makes and models, and I've never had that much of a difference. So apparently the plugs are actually pretty bad. I guess after my time with them, I wouldn't recommend them. The car seems to run a lot better. Even my girlfriend noticed when we were driving the car to dinner tonight, it was actually a lot quieter. It was a lot more tolerable. The rasp is down maybe 50%. It's strange how much it actually changed just going to the TR6 plugs. Anyways, in an upcoming video, we're going to install this that showed up. This is an Ls6 intake manifold, so I've got it. Came with fuel rails, fuel injectors, and the map sensor in the back, which is good. I do have to order a couple parts to actually round out what I have to do that with, because there's a couple parts you should buy when you're doing it, and hopefully that's going to add quite a bit of power, especially on a cammed car. I think that the difference will be pretty noticeable on this car, especially versus like a stock LS1. It should be more dramatic because this one already needs a lot more airflow than a stock car. I guess that's going to about do it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it, learned something. I learned a lot. E3 spark plugs are junk, apparently. The ones that I have aren't visibly bad, but they really don't work that great. If you're new to the channel, I hope you subscribe and stay tuned. We're going to go have a Dyno Day release soon. There's a contest that's still open for that, and you're just going to have to guess what kind of power the car is going to make. Now that I've got it tuned up, I think it's going to actually make a little bit more than it did the first time around. In the previous dyno video, it made 383 average real horsepower and 330 torque. So if you go back to check out this video here, drop your horsepower and torque guess in the comments and let me know what you think it's going to make with the dyno tune. And you'll be entered to win a UMI Performance t-shirt, one of the channel decals, and I think I've got a pretty good gang of other decals going as things sit to give to a couple other runners-ups. And the whole point of today's video is actually road trip prepping and dyno tune prepping, so it's going to kill two birds with one stone, more or less. We're going to go on a trip, like I said in the beginning of the video, down to Marshall, Minnesota at the end of the month, or at the beginning of next month, I guess it would be. And we're going to go check out a car show. So if you're interested in seeing a little bit of a vlog of me and my girlfriend driving down there and checking out the show and some of the cars and whatever, let me know. Drop a comment down below. If you don't, drop a comment down below. Just let me know. I don't really know what you guys want to see. It's kind of uncharted territory for me on the channel. So just let me know what you think. I'm pretty open to however the channel should go. You're the guys that are watching it. So pretty open to your advice. Like I said, if you're a returning subscriber, stay tuned for the Ls6 intake. That's going to come up in a pretty soon in an upload. If you're a new viewer, hope you liked today's video. Give it a thumbs up. Drop a comment down below if you have any questions. I'm really good at getting back to everybody on that. And I guess until we get to the next video, we'll see you next time.